Thanks for joining us for today's session, Collaboration Design with G Suite, Employee Portals and Chat. I'll now turn it over to your presenter, Brian, to get us started. Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everybody. This is Brian Berchanowski. I am the Collaboration Design Lead at here at Worsta, and I'm joined by my colleague Rico, who's a Google Cloud and G Suite consultant. So we're going to be kind of tag teaming this this presentation, and just kind of want to start us off by taking a look at G Suite holistically. What we're going to be focused on in today's session is how we can use G Suite to improve communication and collaboration internally, and we'll be focusing on a couple of applications that I think sometimes get forgotten about a bit more. I guess maybe not so much chat. We'll be looking at some of the things you can do with chat, but Google Sites certainly is one that that I see as being underutilized, at least in my experience. So just a quick refresher here about G Suite. It's really easy to kind of overlook some of these other applications. When we think about G Suite, usually you think, Gmail, Google Calendar, maybe Google Drive and Docs and so on. But there are a lot of other applications that that are really worth a closer look and worth some effort. Once you adopt G Suite for your organization, potentially worth some effort to introduce these to your user population and sort of encourage people to make use of them. So, just a few examples here that you can see on this slide are things like Google Forms, which you can use for questionnaires, Google Sites, which we'll take a look at a bit later here in the slides, but sites can be used to create employee portals or repositories for information, things like that. You've got Google Keep, which is like a note-taking application, Jamboards for doing whiteboarding in real time with another location, which is really cool. App Maker, which you can use to create some low-code applications for automations and other things like that. Another great one is Cloud Search. This is one that I actually really like this tool, and I find a lot of people don't really use it, and I actually probably don't use it as much as I should. But Cloud Search allows you to search across all of G Suite, basically. So if you're searching for a keyword, it'll turn up results out of your Gmail, your Google Drive, sites, all kinds of stuff. So it's a really great way to find what you're looking for across all the different G Suite applications. There's a few others here like Google Vault, which you can use for archiving. You've got easy access to administrative controls, great tools for mobile device management, and excellent security features as well, which will provide actionable insights for security-related issues. But again, our focus today is going to be more on the portals and chat angle. Before we get into talking about our sort of demo scenarios here that we'll be taking a look at, I'm going to turn it over to Rico. He'll give you a bit more information about how G Suite can be used for work.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. Now, I just want to set the table for why this is all relevant, right? It's not just because Google is visually appealing, easy to use, but it's more than anything because it improves processes. We are all about efficiency and trying to save people time, which in turn will save you money. And there's nothing wrong with legacy tools. When we think classic, that song is a classic, that movie's a classic. Things that are classic are great because they got us this far. But does that mean that it's the way to the future? Probably not. And in the case of technology, we definitely want to be forward thinking. So when using those legacy tools or things that are classic, we don't want you held up in the past because we are in a different world. We do need to get modernized. And the way that we've been doing things, while it got us this far, it might be hindering our future growth, right? You do have a substantial amount of employees that feel like they're kind of disconnected from the rest of the organization. We all know how it is to work in email, and things can get convoluted. You can end up with a thread that's 38 responses long. or can get forwarded, and now you have a new thread that's the same title, and things can get lost in the mix or fall through the cracks. Not only that, but people sometimes tend to feel like they're on an island by themselves. And anytime you're working as an individual, although it might be easier to focus, you also don't have the tools needed when it comes to collaborating with your teammates or your team members. That, and then also you're not as quick when it's something that's repetitive. There might be unnecessary clicks, things that are mundane that can be sped up and made more efficient utilizing G Suite. So that being the introduction, so to speak, for what we do best here at Worsta, we try to look at those processes and give you ideas and bounce off ideas with you so that we can look at your business holistically, what you do and how you do it. Is there a better way to do it? What are your pain points and headaches that you just can't seem to solve that are slowing down the overall organization? So what we do here at Worsta is we look at what you do, which obviously we hope that we can improve. We can come up with proof of concepts. Sometimes it might just be, well, we know what we want to do. How do we do it? And we can help you roll that out via a brand new implementation, a brand new rollout to G Suite if you're just now migrating to G Suite. But more importantly, the journey does not stop there, right? We continue to get things down the pipe from Google because we are a premier partner with Google. We have kind of a look behind the scenes before brand new technologies get rolled out, or even before they make improvements to the existing ones. So we have a firsthand look at that. And as your partner, we can kind of key you in and say, hey, did you know that this is coming in fall of 2020? And not only that, but because we seek to understand your business, we can immediately connect the dots and say, well, this is coming in the fall of 2020, but I also know based on the conversation we had back in March, it's going to solve that problem that you and I were discussing back then, right? And that's where having a dedicated technical account manager like myself really comes into play. We can look at your business processes and continue to innovate as the technology improves, and more importantly, as we have brand new ideas and new business initiatives rolling out. We definitely, like I mentioned, want to maximize the tools that you already have, but for this, I'll leave it to Brian.
Thanks, Rico. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be taking a look specifically at two tools here over the next few minutes. The first one being Google Sites, and then Rico will talk a bit about chat. As part of our collaboration design, we run a lot of workshops with end users. So, per the previous slide, we really want to try to understand how you guys are working and how we can sort of streamline things. And one of the tools that I kind of mentioned earlier was a bit, I think, underutilized. And there's really like a wow factor when you present this to end users is Google Sites. And, conceptually, like this isn't really anything crazy new or different. It's just that I feel like a lot of people just haven't really kicked the tires on it and tried it out. A lot of scenarios that in like a legacy system you might be using SharePoint for, or Quicker, or some other like tool for creating simple websites. That's what Google Sites is really well suited for. So you can use Sites for creating things like wikis, team portals, simple intranets. I've even seen, for some companies like smaller organizations, they'll even have their like public-facing website created in Google Sites, although it's not necessarily the best tool for that. But if you're like a mom and pop restaurant or something, it's a free, super easy way to create a website that actually looks pretty good. And you can do some cool stuff as well, like URL mapping. So if you own a URL, brianscafe.com or whatever, and you want to map to that, it's really easy to do that. You can also do that for internal stuff. I've seen a lot of companies do it with like subdomains, for instance. So if you want to have like intranet.worsta.com and map a Google site to that, you can do that very easily as well. As far as actually creating the sites goes, users love this because there's really no programming or design skills needed. If you can create like a Word document, a Google Doc, you can create a page on a Google site. It's all very easy to use, and it also is automatically formatted for mobile devices. So it actually looks pretty good. Like if you pull it up on, and you can see in the screenshot here, if you pull it up on a phone or tablet, it'll kind of automatically resize. So it doesn't look horrendous, or you're not forcing users to scroll back and forth. So with that, I'll turn this over to Rico just for a moment. He'll talk a bit about chat, and then we'll actually dive into some use cases, some real life examples of how you can use these.
I appreciate that, Brian. Similarly to what Brian said, there are ways that we also use Google Chat to stay connected, to make things easier for your average user, but it also consolidates a lot of different platforms. I know one that we use internally, and we've used it less and less now that we have Google Chat, is Slack, right? The nice thing about Google Chat is that they launched a feature where you can now have rooms. We now have new chat rooms that you can designate as, well, this is the HR chat room, this is the IT chat room. This chat room is just for general questions, right? And it's an intelligent app that allows you to expedite things that you would otherwise be waiting for an email response for. So I mentioned earlier, you can have things fall through the cracks with an email. Sometimes there's a sense of urgency and you can't wait on that person to see your email and respond to it, which is where Google Chat comes into play. You can say, hey, I emailed that person so that they have it on record, but I need an answer right now. So you can go ahead and tee that up via Google Chat and say, hey, I sent you a message earlier. I know it was early, but I have this question that I need answered right away. And it really allows your team to stay connected real time, and also will come through their mobile device, their tablet, depending on what they're using, it'll come through on any device, and the notification will pop up as if they had a phone call or as if they had a text message. So I know as human beings, we tend to look at our phone, I forget the actual statistic, but it's plenty of times per hour. So if they're looking at their phone to check their Facebook or check their text messages or check their phone calls, odds are they're also going to see your chat instantly, whereas that email might have been missed. So definitely allows folks to stay connected. It allows for responses and action to happen much quicker. But like I mentioned earlier, it also helps you divide different tasks and different purposes for a designated business unit. So here, for example, we have our sales team separate from our entire team, separate from our water cooler. Our water cooler is where we might just say, hey, great job on that project, great job on this, major kudos to so-and-so. But that would be separate from when you need to message an individual specifically. So, and as you can see in the slide there, you will be able to see very quickly who is online, right? In this example, we have 3 folks online, another 3 folks that are offline or currently away from their desk. And if you're looking at Natalie Willis, there's a little half moon there, which tells you that she is currently outside of her business hours. She might be off-site, she might be in a different time zone altogether or traveling, but for whatever reason, she has designated herself as unavailable outside of business hours, and that little half moon will show us that. So you're not, wondering, why isn't Natalie responding? Oh, looks like she's offline and she's currently, out of business hours or away for quite some time. So there's a lot of cool functionality to what Google Chat can do. And like I mentioned in our personal example, it also allows us to consolidate what we used to use Slack for, which we can now do with Google Chat Rooms. And let's get into some use cases. I'll allow Brian to take over here so he can give some examples.
Thanks, Rico. So I'll speak to an example here for Google Sites, so that I think Google Sites would be well suited to. So what's our problem statement, right? Like, what are we trying to solve for? Well, this is a really common thing. The need to provide timely resources to people and be able to update them easily and quickly. So, if you have the need to stand up resources, well, I hear this a lot. We have an intranet already, but there's a team that runs it or requires some development knowledge or HTML or whatever to add things to that. So there's a lag, and it requires coordination between IT staff, who are the managers of this site, and management, and then the subject matter experts who, let's say you're trying to add resources for your finance team. Obviously the subject matter needs to come from that team, but then you've got another team that needs to add it to this. So there's a lot of delay caused by this, and there's a lead time when you need to post things to your intranet. So how can you solve this? Well, Google Sites is a way that you can solve for this. And so Dave, if you want to flip to the, or Rico, if you want to flip to the next slide. What our solution would be, one of the things that we would potentially recommend if we were doing consulting for you, is to use a Google site. And so you can stand up a Google site very quickly, literally with just a couple clicks. You can provide edit access to the people who actually need to create the materials, right? Your subject matter experts. You can let them directly contribute to this site, create pages. And then it's very easy to publish the site. So you can control who has access to it. You can make it available to specific people internally if you want, or you can share it externally. You could share it to anyone within your company. The sky's the limit when it comes to sharing and exposing this information in the way that you need to. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also make it a lot easier to find your site if you do like what I just kind of call a friendly URL by using that web address mapping feature. So just to give you a kind of a real life example, we've had several customers with the COVID-19 situation that I'm sure you've heard about over the last couple of months. And they've come to me and said, hey, like we need to share information with our employees about what are the new policies and practices for like working from home, or coming into the office, not coming into the office. Had some healthcare organizations say we really need to stand up resources quickly that our providers have access to, our healthcare providers. And these documents change all the time, because when this situation was evolving, they were getting new information every day from the CDC, so they were constantly updating the materials that they were sharing with their end users. So Google Sites was actually a great tool to solve for that need, because they could basically say, here's a site, here's a blank slate. You guys, as the team who's kind of coordinating all these assets, knock yourselves out, add as much stuff as you want. You can embed Google documents, you can embed files, you can share it with other people. And if you need to make a change to it, you can literally just go in and do it yourself. And it updates basically instantaneously. So it was a great solution that we've had several customers use specifically for the COVID-19 thing. But there are a lot of other things that you could use a Google site for. I mean, we've set them up as like an onboarding resource for new employees. Hey, go here, and it'll walk you through, the resources that are posted for getting started, setting up your account, what kind of training you should go through, how to do your timesheets, all that kind of stuff. Just internal training in general. If you've got like some kind of course you need to run people through and you want to post the material there, Google Classroom actually is another tool that you can use for that, which is like a different topic altogether. But that's one of the other things in that whole constellation of G Suite apps that we showed earlier. Intranets. So if you just want to have a company-wide intranet where you post different things, news, updates, information, or department-specific intranets, like the finance team, wants to create a site and they post all their resources there. They have a page for kudos for people, profiles for people, that kind of thing. Another one's a project dashboard. If you have like a big project that you're working on, you could create, like, let's say you have a fairly big project team, maybe there's 20 people working on that project, and it's a project that lasts 6 months or a year. It would definitely be worth the squeeze to set up a simple Google site for that team, so they can find things easily. Maybe there's like a home page with a dashboard, different objects embedded in there, like what their burn rate is for their hours, all kinds of stuff. So there are many, many scenarios that you can use Google Sites for. And I guess it's also worth mentioning that this is all included in the cost of G Suite. So there's not like a separate cost or hosting cost or anything for these sites. If you have a G Suite license, if you're like a paying G Suite user, you can create as many sites as you want. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rico, and he'll give you a similar example around how you can solve for things using Google Chat.
Thanks so much, Brian. So moving back to Google Chat, and this is actually, if you were in attendance and joined one of our previous webinars that we did, I really enjoyed presenting Google Drive, and this statistic actually applies also to Google Chat. Brian mentioned COVID-19, which we're all familiar with, but it really stands out when you take a look at how many folks were working from home prior to COVID-19, just under 4%, and the percentage of folks working from home at the end of May. You know, basically almost a third of the entire workforce is now working from home on a regular basis. And that was at the end of May. Here we are, you know, mid-June, and I would venture to say that that'll be closer to 50% before the year's over. So our organization is definitely equipped and ready to help folks that want to get ready to have a remote workforce, even if it's just their backup plan, even if it's not your norm. You know, hopefully we don't have another pandemic or another natural disaster or any type of unforeseen circumstance that will force us to have our workforce working remotely. Because if that does happen, hopefully we'll be closer to 90% or 100% of folks prepared for it. So in this issue or in this example, communication can sometimes be all over the place. I mentioned the example of emails getting lost, or sometimes you may have, you know, they could have replied to the email chain and forgot to leave you on CC, which happens all the time. And then in your mind, you're thinking, well, that email chain died off. You know, why did we stall? And then the other folks on the email thread can say, what do you mean? We just got a response from Ian this morning, or from, you know, or from John, or from whoever this morning. So that particular example happens all the time, and you'd be surprised as to how many folks can get lost in the email flux, so to speak. So again, I want to pose the example where Google Chat can solve a lot of those problems, specifically with group messages or having a direct one-to-one message. A nice thing that Google Chat just upgraded is that you now have a bot, a chat bot that will actually remind you if you missed a specific chat. So if you chatted me late last Friday, it was maybe 8 p.m. on Friday, that bot will remind me on Monday morning, did you see this particular chat? You may have missed it. And it won't send you via chat, it'll also email you that reminder, so that if you're looking through your inbox first thing Monday morning, you'll see that reminder, oh wow, I didn't even know that I missed that chat late Friday evening. So you can actually go back and pick up that project, or pick up that action items, so to speak, that you may have completely forgot about or not seen altogether. So in this example, similar to earlier, you can send one-to-one messages, you can actually create a room, you can find a bot, because there are different chat bots within Google, right? So there's a lot of nifty things that you can do with the new improved Google Chat. Another thing that you were not able to do in the past was to full screen that chat room. You can now go ahead and full screen, so that you're not looking at this small window. In this example, I should have maximized so that you could see what I mean when I say full screen, but it'll look just like an email. You won't be looking at a small window. You'll be able to see it full on your entire screen. You can also forward all of your chats to your inbox. You can now also utilize emojis. So if you don't have the time to give somebody praise, but you can send a quick thumbs up emoji, we can now do that as well. And also, let's say that you accidentally messaged the wrong person. In the past, you might have been like, oh, wow, I just goofed and sent so-and-so in sales a message that was intended for HR. Whoops. You can now undo that whoops by just simply going back and editing or deleting a message altogether. So to, to kind of summarize your solution, staying connected has really never been easier. Utilizing both Google Chat and Google Drive and all of the different real-time collaboration tools, there's no way for anything to fall through the cracks or a project to be stalled because you didn't know that we were waiting on you, right? There's really endless ways for you to be collaborating with your team, communicating with your team, to ensure that those type of gaps in communication just do not happen. So in this particular video, I thought it was really cool that you can see that we have a certain project. That project we may have emailed a certain person on already, Project Mammoth, but let's say that we need to bump it. Let's say, hey, Jessica, you did a phenomenal job. By the way, I'm also waiting on a statement of work, right? And that's where chat really might take things to the next level. So All of these are use cases, but certainly just a few of the low-hanging ones. We have a lot more that we see on the day-to-day, and happy to answer any questions here after the session if you folks do have other use cases that come to mind. But with that being said, just want to thank you for joining us today. We've also had a couple of other sessions, just in case you missed them. They are recorded, and we're happy to share the on-demand videos with you. These are the sessions that we've had prior to today, and we actually have one last one coming up tomorrow, which will be really, really good as well. If you're able to join, we'd love to have you on for that. It'll be on collaboration design and how Worsta can help you achieve that. Here's our information. Brian is one of our collaboration design experts, really a whiz when it comes to putting together some of those sites, like he mentioned, whether it be for new employees or just kind of consolidating information in a clean, crisp way that's usable. He's an expert in doing so, and we're happy to help. And then myself, on the consultant side, I'm happy to share what Google has coming down the roadmap. A lot of the technology already has really nifty, cool tools that you might not be aware of. And I'm happy to kind of share that with you, especially if there's something that we can solve for you that you might already have access to and just don't know yet. So here's our information. We definitely look forward to partnering with you folks. Would love to hear some questions now, since we are at the end of our session. And for that, I'll cue it over to Dave to see if we do have any questions yet.
Yeah, thanks, Rico. One of the questions was, do you guys see this used ever as like an intranet, or at least like in an initial way to get an intranet going?
Sorry, yeah, I will. I was double muted. I'll definitely take that one. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Google Sites, it really depends on the size and scope of your organization. If you're a company of thousands of people, there are different tools that actually are integrated with G Suite, like Lumaps, that are probably better suited to a massive intranet. But I would say for like mid to small size organizations, Google Sites is perfectly sufficient. It allows you to build that intranet without any extra spend. As I mentioned earlier, you can kind of delegate responsibility for creating stuff to different folks very easily. So yeah, we see a lot of companies using it as intranets. We've built several of those for organizations in the past, and it is a great tool for that.
Another question we got is about how to get the Google Sites. Is that a standalone product of G Suite, or do you need to get the entire G Suite set up for that?
It's not a standalone product, so it would be part of like a larger G Suite subscription. I mean, but it is included, to my knowledge. Well, it is included with all the different SKUs of G Suite that are available. The only limiting factor would be that if you had G Suite Basic and you're limited to like 30 gigs of storage per person, site storage is kind of based on your drive storage, so you would have a limit as to like how much stuff you could upload for each site. But if you have any of the other G Suite subscriptions, you have storage.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in at this time. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. As we mentioned, this has been recorded, and we'll be sure to get you the a link to the webinar recording tomorrow once it is ready. Thanks, Rico and Brian.
Our pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.